Hi, good evening, and welcome to the 2021 Economic Depression and Preparation Channel. I'm your host, Tony. Thank you for joining me once again on this weekend edition, July 10th, 2021. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can get the latest, pure, unadulterated truth, financial news on these market conditions and other news as appropriate. Today, I just want to talk about two things in particular briefly. Excuse me. And that's going to be President Biden's new anti-monopoly executive order. And also, I want to talk about the job openings that are supposedly the media is painting it at record highs, but yet they're saying there's a labor shortage going on, that Americans don't want to work in a lot of these states. According to the media, they're having a hard time finding workers despite all of the incentives related to this pandemic. So we're going to get into that just briefly here. But first, President Biden signs an executive order. Seems like he's always been doing lately is signing a bunch of executive orders. It's got to be like the millionth executive order. So what happens is he signs an anti-monopoly executive order, albeit this comes about 15 to 20 years too late, because that's when the rise of the monopolies really happened. The big Facebooks, Amazons, Googles, the big companies like that, Microsofts, that really took over the world back then, as far as commerce is concerned. But anyway, he signs the bill and it targets these seven markets: labor, healthcare, transportation, agriculture, internet service, technology, banking, and the big picture. And so all of this executive orders that he signed, you have to remember that these companies pay a lot of money to dominate the competition. If they're not dominating the competition, they buy out small companies that provide software services, software as a service, or anything like that, because they can afford to do that. They're sitting on cash reserves. Apple was sitting on $85 billion worth of cash reserves. All these Microsoft is sitting on 100 billion cash reserves. So these companies are monopolies, but the same thing happened in the Great Depression. We had mergers and we had antitrust laws. Remember the Sherman Antitrust Act, and all of that came out of the Great Depression. And now here we are again. History repeats itself almost 100 years later. Well, actually in 2029 it'll be 100 years since the Great Depression, but over 90 years later, we're experiencing more anti-monopoly rhetoric talk, but in reality, this is what we have. We have a kind of a socialistic, I guess you can call it like a totalitarianism system, where there's only 4 or 5 companies that are running the show behind the scenes. And by the way, they were the only companies to not shut down. Amazon and other companies, as you know, Target, during the pandemic, at the height of the pandemic back in March of last year, those companies continue to run and continue to make money. And so here we go. They say that job openings are at a record high, but aren't Americans filing them? This is in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. Millions of Americans say they can't find a job, believe it or not. We still have a record unemployment of 30 million people are unemployed, but millions of employers are saying they can't find workers despite all of the incentives they've been given, such as pay bonuses, paid time off, gifts. Workers have been doing a lot. A reason for this mismatch, according to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, is that people are leaving cities and industries where businesses need them the most. Well, part of that's true. There's been a mass exodus from some of these cities. As you remember, people left, a lot of the middle, upper class, rich folks left New York City proper and started moving upstate. You had some people moving out to California, exodus to Arizona and Idaho, and just a lot of different places, Colorado, places like that. And so that part of that's true, but the unemployment rate is at 6% right now, well above the pre-pandemic rate of 3.5%, and it's continuing to increase. And one of the reasons why there's a shortage is because people are saying, the people that were working these hospitality jobs and retail, why should they go back to work when they're getting extra unemployment benefits from the government that is going to continue, at least right now, until September 30th, according to most of the states that have signed these extensions. So that's the case. They're making more money staying at home than they are working. And when they do work, you can't even piece together a 40-hour work week with some of these jobs. You'd be lucky if you get 30 hours a week, and that's just not enough to take care of a family, let alone a single person, young millennial or young Gen X or Y, what have you. So That is why, and another thing too is they're painting the picture as if there's so many jobs, but they shipped all these jobs overseas. The warehousing, there's no factories. There's no factories, even technology factories. There's no factories for these kids to work at. Now, Amazon is building a lot of distribution centers out of the middle of nowhere, but remember, half of that is staffed by robots. Robots pick these things off the shelves and send it to your house. Deliver it. Only the delivery drivers deliver it to your house on Amazon, and the truckers. That's it. In these warehouses owned by Amazon, there are mostly robots picking this stuff. You submit your order online, the robot picks it up and boxes it and puts it on the assembly line and puts it in the appropriate delivery truck. So there's not millions of employers, there's not millions of jobs out there, and that's the sad part about it for the Western Hemisphere. So the unemployment rate remains high. It's at 6% in June and growing. And I predict by the end of this year, unemployment rate will be at 9%, almost 10%. And this is going to be absolutely staggering because remember at the peak of the pandemic, unemployment rate was at 14.9%. As you see, 14.8% 2020 April according to this graph. And now we creep down to about 6%. Now we're creeping back up again. There's a second wave. We're going up again. And you can just see the jobs lost gain month to month. I mean, we lost so many jobs that we're not just going to be able to recover here. During the height of this pandemic, we lost over 21 million jobs. And so this takes years to recover, and it's not something that's going to come back in 1 or 2 years. This is a 10-year deal on this recovery at the minimum, guys. And so Amazon and Facebook, of course, they're targets of the Biden's executive order, big tech, but it doesn't really mean anything. This is a moot point at this point. At this point, these companies are the only thing that's holding up the U.S. economy, because the Federal Reserve Bank is going to pump money into the stock market and into these companies so they can buy back their own stock. And the job creation that people may argue that they create, yes, they create jobs, but the working conditions I've heard in some of these businesses like Amazon and Facebook and Google is very extreme. People are putting in like 16, 17-hour days. They're paying them. So the pay, it kind of dulls it out if you can't enjoy it, if you're sick all the time, if you're working in unsafe working conditions or conditions that are not favorable for you and I. So that's something to watch out for too. But anyway, he's trying to appear to put pressure on these companies, but the monopolies are already there. The merger's already there because they know the companies know what's coming. Just like in the Great Depression, a lot of people merged and they knew what was coming. They were merging because the Great Depression brought about a lot of changes in production, manufacturing, and the same thing is happening now. So don't be surprised if you continue to see these rushed out IPOs on the stock market. It doesn't mean anything. The stock market can go to 40,000 by the end of this year. It doesn't mean anything because the same thing happened in Venezuela. Stock market went to 50,000. The economy went the great collapse, depression. Same thing in Zimbabwe, Weimar Germany, Greece, Turkey, when they had their crash. All these stock markets, so the stock market can continue to go up, but paper can be printed, but the value of that paper can't be guaranteed anywhere in the Western Hemisphere or in the world. And so continue to save your money, continue to buy real physical assets, food, water, medicine, gold and silver, some cryptos if you're into that, and also land, and also some other resources if you can, solar generators. Personal hygiene products are going to be another thing that's going to go up expensive too. So for both men and women, continue to stack those two because a lot of people are not thinking about that. They think that the supply chain is still broken. And so if you can get personal hygiene products, get them now, save them, because that's going to be the next thing that's going to be coming to short, especially as the wintertime approaches. And prices on that's going to go up. And gas has already gone up. So that's just going to be another thing too. So be safe, my friends. I'll talk to you very soon. Thank you very much for listening. Have a great day.